John Le Carré once said, a spy, like a writer, lives outside the mainstream population, and he steals his experience through bribes and reconstructs it. Keep this in mind as we discuss today the recent CIA director secret trip to China and what does it mean for the future of the US-China relations. My name is David Waralu.
And my name is Elizabeth Ann Stewart.
And you are watching Geopolitics in Conflict.
And our show today is brought to you by BioTrust Collagen.
CIA Director William Burns has made a secret trip to China for the Biden administration.
CIA Director William Burns met with his Chinese counterparts last month in an attempt to cool tensions with Beijing.
But a U.S. official also telling us Secretary Blinken is hoping to visit China sometime this summer.
Indeed. So what's going on, Elizabeth, with this secret trip? I know it happened about a week or so, but it's still.
Well, the thing is, it was secret, so we didn't know about it until very, very recently.
Yeah.
And so it's the CIA's director, William Burns' secret trip to China. Now, what does that mean?
And by the way, it was reported on the Financial Times, and you know,
I'm impressed you have a paper copy.
It's because you're going to have to make
Times.
sure the accuracy of the information. That's one. Second thing is where I got this paper from. On my way from Europe.
Yep.
Because that's what I got. So I saved it for you guys to see from the Financial Times. So anyway, that is very interesting because nobody was expecting this trip.
Yep.
Out of every sort of representative of the US government, the CIA director,
right?
You know, he wasn't the state secretary of state,
right?
Because Secretary of State was saying that he canceled his trip. Well, wait a minute.
He did. He canceled his trip.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Was he invited? He wasn't.
Yeah.
He lied.
Right.
I looked into the press release of the Chinese Foreign Ministry. There was no invitations from China to begin with.
Well, but he canceled his trip,
true.
Right?
That's true.
Because of the balloon that was shot down. So he had a very good excuse, and we see that from politicians sometimes where they'll use excuses that otherwise they may.
I know, they just make this stuff. Man. But here's the thing, you know, we're going to have to put this trip within, literally, under the geopolitical landscape.
Yeah.
Because it's significant. When you have, as one who works in Washington, D.C., and very familiar with the intelligence community, when you have a CIA director visits a country, there are a lot of question marks.
Right. Right, and specifically, why was it the CIA director who went? There are a lot of other people who could have gone in that circumstance. Why is it specifically the CIA director, William Burns?
That is a good question.
Right? It wasn't Lloyd Austin.
The Secretary of Defense,
It was not the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
It was not the President of the United States, Joe Biden, which that I think would be a very interesting event if he were to go. But it's the CIA director.
Yeah.
And not only that, he didn't actually talk to President Xi, for example.
Yeah.
He talked to the intelligence communities,
Yeah.
the high ups that are more or less in his space. What is the intelligence of the United States of America talking to the intelligence of China for?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question because what comes next will become the sort of, you know, was the CIA director taking initiative, foreign policy initiative on his own, or was he ordered by his boss, President Biden in this case?
Right.
And that's usually, if I am to guess, I'm not guessing, usually for something like this with a country like China, I bet you he was dispatched.
That's interesting.
From behind the scenes, Well, there are reasons to that.
Before trying anti-aging serums or wrinkle creams, check if you're getting enough collagen first. Collagen is a protein that plays a crucial role in maintaining the health and elasticity of our skin. Without it, we may notice visible signs of aging like fine lines and wrinkles. While collagen production naturally declines as we age, certain collagen supplements can help bring back a youthful glow like you wouldn't believe. This is why I highly recommend taking collagen. Collagen is specially formulated to enhance skin elasticity and hydration. It's made with the top 5 most powerful types of collagen that are essential for skin health, elasticity, and firmness. With 10 grams of bioactive collagen peptides per serving, collagen is designed to make it easy to boost your collagen levels to support healthier skin. Try it today to receive 53% off, free shipping, free VIP live health and fitness coaching for life, a free new e-report titled The 14 Foods for Amazing Skin, and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Plus, you'll help feed hungry children, families, and communities in need to live healthier lives with your order through BioTrust partnership with NoKidsHungry.org. Order today by going to healthwithgeo.com or by clicking the link in the description down below.
First of all, because the president's son, there was some involvement of some money that's been transferred from
A lot of money.
from the intelligence community. The person involved in China was with the intelligence agency over there from state security. And by the way, I did find an information just for you to know the difference. There is a big difference for them. For China, they don't lump everything under one entity.
Right.
For example, you have the Ministry of State Security, okay? Then you have the which is the principal civilian intelligence security. You get the secret police. You get the Agency of People's Republic of China, responsible for foreign intelligence, for counterintelligence, and for political security.
Yeah.
So this is why it shouldn't be confused. Shouldn't be confused with what they call the Ministry of Public Security. Those are two separate entities. Then you have the military intelligence.
Yeah.
Those are a separate entity within the military. So we do have the same.
We have the same, absolutely.
As a former military, I was in the military intelligence unit. That's where I was. And we do have one that falls under DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency. Then we have the civilian ones, like the CIA, like the NSA, like the NRO, and so forth.
Right.
Those are just for FYI for you to know. So the question for us becomes to understand, and just for our viewers to have a better understanding, is when a director of a central intelligence agency goes to another country,
right?
Because it begs the question, who's conducting now foreign policy?
And that's a fantastic question, because look at what we have going on between China and the United States right now, right? So we just had the ship incident. We did a live stream video, if you guys want to check it out, on what the U.S. Navy said was a dangerous maneuver with a U.S. vessel. So we have a video of the Chinese vessel basically cutting off the U.S. vessel.
Yeah.
Right? So we have that. And then we have the jet incident.
Which was 10 days ago.
Which was 10 days before that, right?
You're right.
So this comes kind of smack in the middle of those two events. And what do we have going on? The Shangri-La.
Yeah. Where China turned down the request by the U.S. for the Department of Defense, Secretary of Defense, that is, to meet with. You're absolutely correct.
So this is also very interesting timing, because as we're looking at the circumstances between China and Taiwan sort of starting to heat up, while Chinese officials are saying if there is actually a conflict, if there is an escalation between the United States and China, it would be disastrous for the world.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at U.S. policy from the White House, and coming out that's sort of, I think, different than what the CIA director going to China really shows. So it's a weird tug of war, where one side seems to be trying to poke and provoke.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the other side is trying to calm down, because there was, interestingly enough, between these two incidents also, there was a series of articles that came out that said, oh, the United States is trying to calm things down, right? And then almost immediately afterwards, we have these two incidents.
Yeah.
And so how is the United States trying to calm this situation down? Right?
Yeah, and I, the moment that incident happened with the destroyer, to me it was a provocation, plain and simple.
Right.
You know, we don't sugarcoat this. That's how it is perceived internationally. You know, why are you going all the way to the Taiwan Strait to conduct naval exercises with Canada?
Well, and here's the thing. I would love your opinion on this.
Yeah.
Because right now we're watching thing after thing after thing after thing happen, right? So, you know, a few months ago, a year ago even maybe, the story came out that the U.S. basically special forces were in Taiwan training their troops,
That
right?
is correct.
So we saw that. So that's a provocation in its own right. So if you send military to go train their military, who are you training them to fight? Right? That's ultimately the question.
Yeah.
Who are you training them to fight? And what is your stake in doing that? In basically spending US tax dollars to send special training units out to train their troops. So we have that. So then we have thing after thing, and you're seeing these like little provocations because maybe had the first thing been the ship, had the first thing been the U.S. destroyer and the Chinese vessel and the Canadian vessel also, the Montreal, if we had just seen that, do you think that it would have been the same reaction from Beijing with the ship as if that had been the first thing? Then if this had been something that we're starting to see these little
it's almost like
little
pattern.
pokes, right?
It's almost patterns going.
Yeah.
I'm almost likely China will react differently, but I think also because China now is in position, I believe geopolitically, is in position to say no, is in position to flex its muscles. Because that's, to me, the way I look at it, it's a natural progression.
Yeah.
When a country's economy grows, because we went through it after World War II.
We did.
Once your economy grows, what is the next step? You strengthen your military.
Right. Because now you have the money to do that with.
And that's exactly what China's doing.
Yep.
So the question that I ask is, why are we making all this fuss that now China's do it?
Right.
When we did it, it was all right.
Right.
You know? And this is where I see that challenge that the West is having.
Yeah.
Not wanting to accept the rise of another power, let alone it's not from the Western world.
Right. And I don't necessarily blame the United States for wanting to keep power. People want to keep the power that they have.
Yeah.
It's just, how do you go about doing that? Do you go about doing that through cooperation, or do you go about doing that through conflict? And right now, what we have observed is the U.S. is doing it through conflict.
Well, we are abusing it. Let's just say straightforward. We abused the power. You know, the power we had for. You look at it just this morning. I had to listen to or read. I listened to it first. Then I had to check the info about a survey. How much trust in the government. You know, would you believe that back in here's the thing. Back in early 60s, the trust in the government was so high.
Wow.
Early 60s.
Yeah.
Then right after the Vietnam War, that things start to decrease. Then you move into the 70s with the Nixon. Then you move into the 80s with Reagan. Then you move into the 90s with President Bush. Then you moved forward, so forth till now you have with President Biden with the low rating for the trust in the government. And this was about, by the way, you know what it was about? It was about the government installing cameras in everybody's home. For the security, I was like, whoa.
Absolutely
The government has no freaking place in my
Absolutely
house.
not.
That's not, I don't trust the government anyway.
No,
So,
that gives me chills. Gives me chills. I mean, we already have, if you go to the airport and you have to be in that machine, right?
You're right. But here is the thing, with this idea of how, just for us to go back to that point, to ensure, because there's a lot at stake. Geopolitically, economically, and so forth.
Right.
You hear both arguments from the intelligence community, but also from the defense. I found it very interesting. One comment that both of them share. And the comment was stated by none other than the commander of the 7th Fleet. And in comparison to what William Burns said, and both of them said, well, we wanted to ensure the free commerce in the South China. I found it very interesting how both, here is an entity in the Department of Defense, here is an entity in the intelligence community, but all of them converging on, well, if it is the case, where is the foreign policy strategy here to begin with?
Yeah.
And because this begs the question, why the CIA director instead of the person that deals with foreign policy not going to China?
No, that's a fantastic
question. It's because those are common questions that we need to ask if we are to think about, do we have a foreign policy towards China to begin with? We don't.
Right.
We don't. That is what part of the problem is.
Yeah.
We don't have a well-cohesive and well-structured foreign policy that deals with China's rise.
Right.
We seems to be just reacting. And this is why I believe personally the trip of the Central Intelligence Agency director, who was ordered by President Biden to go, sort of could put a damp on, well, we don't mean to create tensions, but we're still going to do it. It's just, this back and forth thing, which doesn't bode well for the relationship.
No, it doesn't. And, you talk about this a lot where, if you've broken trust over and over and over again, people will stop trusting you. And the problem is this, and you've spoken about this too, is that this isn't like going into Afghanistan. This isn't going into Iraq. This is China. And China will fight back. And I understand militarily, China is not where the United States is. The United States has built up its military over a very long time. But the issue that China has basically a lot of power in is that number one, their economy is rising. And number two, they're doing a very good job of finding allies. And allies that are rising. So when they're looking at the allies that they're bringing together, right? So when they brokered the deal with Saudi Arabia, do you remember? They brokered the deal with Saudi Arabia and their longtime rival, Iran.
That's
Thank
correct.
you. Sorry, my mind went blank.
As a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought this up. You know why? 2 days ago, Iran opened its embassy in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Officially.
Huge deal,
Officially.
right? Officially. By brokering that peace agreement,
Yeah.
China got something out of the deal. There's just no way that's not true.
Yeah.
There's no way that's not true. So now one of the United States' largest oil exporters is now in favor with China and substantially less in favor with the United States. We know what happened when Joe Biden tried to call and say, hey, we need more oil.
And even went there physically.
And
turn him down.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, just to add what you just said about the major oil, China has 3. You got Iran.
Yeah.
You got Saudi Arabia. And you got Russia. Yeah, you got 3.
So, and especially with the sanctions on Russia oil right now. So China, they may militarily not be as strong as the United States. That is absolutely true. But economically and partnership-wise, they seem to understand. And I would not like the Chinese way of governance here in the United States. I would absolutely not like that.
And it won't work for us.
It absolutely would not work for us. And the Chinese government is not, I'm not going to say whether they're good or not. What I can tell you is I don't want that here. But I absolutely can also acknowledge what they're doing or what they seem to be doing. And what they seem to be doing is building allies across the globe in power positions.
Well, that's why
in resource power positions.
Yeah, that's why I said last time the new geopolitical order will be based on economic blocks.
Right.
Not an ideology. As a matter of fact, China and Russia, believe it or not, they just conducted an air patrol together in East Asia.
Right. Yeah.
Together. So to me, that's a hint for what lies ahead as far as the military. I will use the term alliance, but it's not a treaty of sort. It might get to that at some point.
Right.
As I argued in my Russia book, I don't see the sign, at least back then when I wrote it, I didn't see the sign yet that a military alliance between Russia and China will be forged anytime soon.
Yeah.
But now I'm starting to see the signs of when you conduct a joint patrol air space, that gives me an idea that they could be moving into that direction. Interesting enough, interesting enough, is that an article came up on the Washington Post saying that the US will be able to take on two front wars. I was like, whoa!
What?
Yeah, that's what they're saying. The US will be.
no.
I don't think so.
I don't think so
I don't
either.
think so. We don't have the manpower for that.
Right.
And the firepower, you know,
Right.
you get two major military powers
Right.
taking on one.
Right.
We won't be able to. So I was surprised by the article in the Washington Post,
Right.
which we all know the Washington Post is another mouthpiece for the
Right.
White
Well,
House. Let's just say
I
it
think,
straightforward.
I think if people are here, they know that legacy media is not
Oh.
exactly known for being accurate.
Yeah, and this is why we do what we do.
Yeah.
It's because we wanted to provide, you know, some sort of objective information,
Right.
and we'll let you
Right.
reach your own conclusions because we don't reach conclusions for you. So this is where that argument of you start to think in terms of what was the objective of the
Right.
CIA director's trip to China.
And I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I think we'll never really know.
No.
But you know, when you're dealing with the CIA, so it's interesting that he is who went. So Seymour Hersh wrote an article not very long ago, basically talking about the fact that his contacts, unnamed, but you know they're spies,
Spies,
so
of course.
that's not unreasonable.
Yeah.
But his sources basically were saying that the United States president wasn't reading the presidential daily brief.
The PDB.
Yeah. Will you explain, because a lot of people don't know what this actually
Yeah.
is and that the president actually gets this every day.
Well, the PDB, Presidential Daily Briefing, usually that's one sheet of paper
Yeah.
that has the key information, intelligence from around the world that the intelligence community has been collecting
Yeah.
for the last 24, 48 hours. Usually you'll have a top analyst in the agency will go with the director because to the White House, and the president will have about literally no more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's about it. You only have about, sir, here are the key top issues in the world that you need to know.
Yeah.
Now, that PDB can be very political or can become a very political.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the former president, President Trump, the moment he became president, I had one of my contacts in Washington and was
Yeah.
like, hey, the last thing he's going to see is the PDB.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised because they were concerned about
Yeah.
what he will do with, because it's a very sensitive information.
Right.
That information is coming from different sources, including humans, but also the SIGINT, and there's a lot of moving parts into that. So that's what the daily briefing is important for president to know, because that's part of how he or she or whomever is in the White House as a president at the time decides on the policies and the strategies.
Right.
So the PDB, the information contained in that briefing, is very, very important to how we managed
Right.
global order.
Right.
Basically, that's what's in it. So, like you point out, could it be that President Biden doesn't see all of it? I won't be surprised.
Right.
It's because President Biden, or the administration that is, tends to sort of use the intelligence to favor one direction or another. It's not just them. Let me rephrase this.
Right.
one.
Right.
It's been known in our
Right.
political system. As a matter of fact, in 2015, I wrote an article where some higher-ups in the military altered the intelligence report to justify certain acts. So it's
Right.
nothing new here.
Right.
It just, when the intelligence will become used as a political tool.
Right.
And this is what this trip, for me, what it means.
Yeah.
Is that now the Central Intelligence Agency, the one conducting U.S. foreign policy?
That's a great question.
So,
That's
and
a
it
great
shouldn't
question.
be.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be. It's an intelligence agency that deals with intelligence matters. You leave the foreign policy. That's like saying the FBI
Yeah.
will have to take care of counterintelligence around the world.
Right.
Well, the
No,
intelligence,
yeah.
the FBI's job is inside,
Right.
and it's an investigative
Right.
nature.
But if the president is not reading that, if the president is not getting that information, is it possible? And I don't know what the
Yeah.
truth is here, right?
Yeah.
What I know is that there are some very, very intelligent and very powerful people in the CIA, including William Burns. So I am very curious as well as to who is it that decided to go to China? Who did this?
Yeah.
Who made
Yeah.
this choice?
I don't have an answer to that. The one I know is that President Biden, because of the trust
Right.
he has in William Burns, asked him to go.
Right.
Of course, they told him the talking points and all that. But
I have another question.
yeah.
And that is, China formally declined to meet with Lloyd Austin, right? So that was a formal. They shook hands, and that was
That's
it
it.
at the Shangri-La Security Summit, right?
Yeah.
That was all that they did. Why is it that they won't allow Lloyd Austin, but they will allow William Burns? What is it about those two different positions or those two specific people that William Burns was allowed to come and had dialogue, whereas Lloyd Austin didn't, and Lloyd Austin was turned down for that?
Well, it's because, at least my understanding is, the meeting with the Secretary of Defense will be open to the people.
Yeah.
How many knew about CIA director going there?
It was secret.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knew until now.
So for China, it's safer
Yeah.
to allow the CIA director than to meet with the Secretary of Defense. Because if the meeting would have taken place, he will because like I always say, in international relations, context matters.
Yeah.
The fact that here is the Chinese defense minister, Shang Fu, and here is the defense secretary, Austin, meeting together with the photo op, whatever. What does he say to the world?
Right.
Oh, China and US, they can talk.
They're cooperating,
No.
yeah.
When in reality, China took a stand by saying no. That's their message they were sending to the US to say, we won't tolerate this nonsense anymore. Because that was a diplomatic slap in the face for the US.
Yeah.
Let's just say it straightforward.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
With the Central Intelligence, nobody, here we are talking about it after because nobody
And
will
we don't know
know
what happened.
No. Those kind of information doesn't come out.
Yeah.
That stays, and rightly so.
Right.
Intelligence matters.
Right.
CIA directors' conversations usually do not get public. That's just it.
Yeah.
But where the difference between the two beside this is that President Biden has more trust in, not more trust, but he knows William Burns for a long time. So they kind of build that good relationship.
Yeah.
So, but also because there are also ties that way back when the president was a vice president, involved with his son into the Chinese companies. So there is some historical, that there is, as a matter of fact, there are some sort of investigations going on in the FBI about that one. It's no different than what happened with Ukraine. When the President Biden was vice president, how much, involvement he had in Ukraine.
Isn't that curious that it's Ukraine and China, the places where there was supposed involvement?
I know.
That we're kind of having some geopolitical issues with at the moment.
And makes you just wonder. You're absolutely correct.
Makes me wonder,
Makes you wonder. So this is why it's very important to understand or to place this trip within its proper context. Because this is not about just a CIA director visiting China. What the heck for?
Right. Especially because right now what we're looking at seems to be escalations. Like little by little, escalation by escalation. This isn't happening immediately.
No.
But we're starting to hear both from China and, they're calling out what's happening.
What's going on?
Now that doesn't mean that they're not also provoking in their own way. So China and Russia doing joint military drills. That's provoking in its own way too.
That's for the airspace stuff, but that's an annual one. They've been doing this for quite a while. Where the issue was with that, it's because it was near South Korea's. That's where. But remember, North Korea is an ally of both Russia and China. So it's kind of, to me, I look at it tit for tat. So who are we to do whatever we want? And when they do it, it's wrong. It doesn't make sense. To them, that's how they're looking at it. So, but the idea of understanding that in the intelligence matters, whatever is going to be done is done behind the scenes. with the Department of Defense, when you have a ship moving like the destroyer,
Right.
it's visible to the rest of the world.
Right.
I am certain there are some involvements in Taiwan
Yeah.
by our intelligence
That
community.
seems
I
very
am not,
reasonable.
yeah, I won't be surprised at that. But at least it's behind closed doors, behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Nobody knows the detail of it. So
Well, and
that-
I wonder how this information got out, right? This specific information about his visit, because it was a secret visit at the time. So what was the decision to sort of release that information?
Well, usually that's if it is to be used as an indication that we are trying to reach out to China by any means.
Yeah.
That is the purpose here. Sometimes even the agency itself will release the information.
That's what I'm saying is, you know,
Oh yeah. No, that's normal for us in
Yeah.
Washington. At least when I was in Washington, I'm still to today. The government itself will
Right.
release the information and say, "Oh, we don't know where it came from," but the government has its own. That's like what just
Right.
happened in Congress yesterday for the conversation that's going on right now about the supplemental bill for the defense regarding Taiwan. You know, they released that information. It was just yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, the media even didn't pick on it yet. And yet, so it wasn't done. It was done intentional for purpose.
right.
Release it like a drop, little by little. That's how
Right.
that's how it works in Washington. When they want to convey message, whatever, one way or another, that's how they go about it. So, what's interesting about William Burns is that he's the highest ranking officer or official from the U.S. since 2021, when Wendy Sherman won
I
over.
remember, when
yeah.
Wendy Sherman went over.
Way back.
Yeah.
So that just to show you the, I won't use the term the blackout of communication or contact. There's still some contact, but
Yeah.
very, very limited.
Right.
Limited. It's because China's realizing is in position to say,
Yeah.
we'll meet with you when we feel like it.
Right. Yes, it was Lloyd Austin who went to Shangfu.
Yeah, Li Shangfu.
Li Shangfu.
Yeah,
And-
defense minister for China.
Right.
Yeah,
And asked him for that meeting.
yeah.
And it was Li Shangfu that said no.
No, because Beijing gave him the order.
Right.
So
Beijing,
of course, General Li is not going to do something against the wishes
Right.
of the government. That
Right.
just their system doesn't work that way. Their system is they, I mean in China in this case, Beijing. When Beijing will decide,
Yeah.
the officials will just execute the orders.
Well, and it's also interesting that Li Shangfu was also sanctioned by the United States.
Yeah, and you know why he was sanctioned?
Yeah. Yes.
You know
but
why
yeah,
he was sanctioned?
yeah.
He was sanctioned because he went ahead and approved the purchase of weapons from Russia.
Right.
So why are we sanctioning him for? Just because he purchased weapons from Russia.
Right.
You know, it's just, it's ridiculous.
I think a lot of people have purchased weapons from Russia.
I know, it's
at this
ridiculous.
point.
You know. Well, how about when other countries buy weapons from us?
Right.
So
right.
that's why it's, I think the individuals or the officials, not the individuals, those are not individuals, those are officials. The officials in Washington, D.C. that decides on the nature of our foreign policy,
Right.
they just don't have a grasp.
Well, or foresight.
Yeah, they
because
just don't.
the sanctions on him,
Yeah.
I think, are part of the reason that meeting got declined.
That's one, yes.
Don't you think?
Yeah, but also because they know that if China would have allowed the meeting, it will not be on an equal footing. You know.
For what reason? Tell me more about that.
I'm sanctioning you.
Right.
Okay, and I'm sitting down with you.
Right.
You know, do you think I will be listening to what you are suggesting?
Right.
You know, I'm the one who's sanctioning you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, whatever, but here is what we're gonna do.
Right.
I'm gonna tell.
Right.
That's what I believe China was thinking from.
Yeah.
Because if the meeting would have been taking place on an equal footing, that you and I will be talking from
Right.
the same platform,
Right.
shall we say, because you are not sanctioning me and I'm not sanctioning you, and we can talk based on respect, mutual
Right.
respect, based on sort of your strategic interest, but also my strategic interest, then we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
But if we are coming to it for I'm sanctioning you and want you
Right.
to sit down with me,
Right.
what incentive do you have?
No, and none. And
Yeah.
and in fact, you know, we have this conversation every so often that punishing people with sanctions.
Yeah.
First of all, you know, we've obviously used sanctions as punishment. Sanctions are punishment.
Punishment, yeah.
But people don't like punishment,
Yeah.
right? As even kids don't like punishment. As adults, we really don't like punishment.
Yeah.
And it's like using the carrot or the stick, right? In many cases, the stick is a really bad option because people don't forget. And and it's not about, because I have a big concern about a one world government. Personally, I have a very big concern about a one world government. My preference is multipolarity, not a one world government.
Not a
okay?
unipolar system, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Managed by one government.
Right.
Yeah.
One government, and it could be, one conglomerated global government. That to me is very scary.
No.
That is very scary because you have even less choice than you had when we have one hegemony, which is the United States, right?
Yeah.
That's way less choice. So multipolarity, my concern about it is that it's going to turn into a one world government. But right now we're looking at a multipolar world.
Yeah.
And there is actually some benefit to having a multipolar world. However, the United States, if it were to share a little bit of power, could probably keep a lot versus sort of having it taken away piece by piece.
The U.S. is not going to go out quietly.
Right.
That's for sure, because that's just the nature of
and I
it.
don't necessarily want it to go out. We live here.
That's true. That's true.
I love it here.
I know. It's just the world order is changing whether we like it or not.
Right.
And that's a reality. And this is why you look at, for example, just the conclusion of the recent meeting in Cape Town of the BRICS foreign ministers. In their communique, they were calling about rebalancing. That's the key word. I put this in quote because it's not my word, it's theirs. So I put it in quote, rebalancing of the world order. That is a heavy word.
Yeah.
Because in international diplomacy, when you use this kind of terminology,
that's
how you send the messages that this world is changing from a unipolar to a multipolar. And like I always say, and I know I don't like to beat the dead horse here, but the new multipolar order will be based on economic blocks. This is why you see in ASEAN, you see in the RCEP, you see in the SCO, you see in the BRICS. BRICS is going to expand. You are seeing more countries more and more and moving into that direction. And one way they want to do it, because when you look at this, because I was aware of this meeting and I followed up on it and so forth. The other thing they were calling on is to seek alternatives to the US dollar in international trade.
Yeah.
Well, guess who's part of the BRICS? It's China.
Yeah.
So, and this is where, to tie it back to the CIA director's visit, his argument was because we wanted to ensure the sort of the movements of goods in South China Sea and Taiwan and all that. No, that's just nothing but a bravado, no more, no less.
Well, there's more serious stuff going on now in that relationship.
Yeah, well, you look at just the example of where we led Ukraine into.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It just, come on. Yeah. It's a reality because it's almost like what if I am to put myself in Asia right now with their mindset, what I will be thinking? I will be thinking, am I seeing the signs for another Ukraine too in Asia?
And a lot of people have brought that up. I mean, that seems, but the Taiwanese people, I don't know what they're being told. So I don't know, I don't know what information they have, because the places that we've been in the world, their understanding of how the U.S. government functions and U.S. foreign policy is flat out wrong.
No, it's wrong.
And it's actually scarily wrong. It's scary how wrong it seems to be.
Well, it's because our foreign policy is militarized.
Right.
That's usually why.
Hugely,
Yeah. And this is why when you have a visit by a Central Intelligence Agency director, begs the question, is this who conducts U.S. foreign policy? It's problematic.
It is.
It is problematic for us because, and again, because like I always say, we don't have seasoned diplomats who truly not only understand the issues, but also have a grasp and depth about how to deal with other countries. Yeah. And the world is changing. That's just the way it is. It's a reality. So you will think it will behoove us to cooperate so at least we can manage that transition peacefully.
It's interesting that you say that, David, because, I've talked to people who tell me, oh no, the world isn't changing.
Ah.
Everything is staying the same. You know, the US is going to conquer all. And here's the issue with that. You know, our country is full of really good people, and I don't want anyone to suffer. That's my personal that's my personal view. But the smart people of the world, like, you know, the big investment people, even like you look at the big bankers, the big investment people, they all see it. They all see the world changing and shifting to, at the very least, a multipolar world, if not the next big empire per se, if I'm going to use Ray Dalio's word, is, you know, being China specifically, but at the very least a multipolar world. So you're right, you know, you can sort of put your head in the sand and you can say, well, nothing's changing, nothing's going to change, but it is changing.
That's called denial.
It is, it's denial.
And I think the West, collective West, is in denial.
And I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, because a lot of people want to say, oh, it's wrong, it's so wrong that this is happening. That's not ours to decide.
No.
What is ours to decide? Because we're not the ones in those rooms, right? The people who are making those decisions, we're not them. That's unfortunately not the reality.
Yeah.
And so it's having the courage to be able to face the fact that the world is changing, because people don't like change. But either you acknowledge that it's changing or you're left behind.
And that's also the question that would lead us to ask is, in the big picture, are we in denial about the collapse, the upcoming collapse? So
I don't know.
It's one of those. Before we close this out, we need to say something about our course.
Yes.
Yeah, because you're the one who's putting it together. So if you will be
I'm the one who's putting it together, but David is the one who's teaching it primarily. We have a course that's being taught live on the U.S. government. Why does the U.S. government operate the way that it does? If you have ever thought to yourself, what is happening? Why is the U.S. government operating this way? Well, David is here to answer that question. So if you want to know more about our government course that's going to be taught live in July, check out geopoliticsinconflict.com and sign up for our free, absolutely free newsletter. And I will be sending out to all of you guys, I will be sending out information about the government course. It is the U.S. government, how and why it works, or doesn't.
No, it doesn't. You're right. Well, thank you for that. So, well, we hope you find this very informative, and we look forward to seeing you next time. As always, prepare yourself for a changing world order. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.